application because it doesn't do much. What it's doing is requesting web page file from a web server. So it's establishing connection with web server, requesting a web page via the HTTP protocol. And then when it receives the page, it just displays the page properly formatted on the screen, so it interprets the code which it received from the web server, and usually that's HTML code that specifies how the page is formatted and how it should be displayed on the screen. If the browser has to do something more complex than that, then it needs help. And either it needs to load some sort of a plugin help application within the browser process that will help it to do whatever it cannot do. For example, play sounds or videos, or display PDF files, or display Word documents, or something else. It either needs a plugin or it needs to launch another process called a helper application that would open the Word document or the PDF file or play the video, whatever in the world the browser is trying to do that it cannot do it. So this exercise is asking is it possible that the same link opened in Firefox browser started a different helper application, then the same link opened in Internet Explorer. So the last time we also talked about something called MIME, which was the multi-purpose internet mail extensions. This was used to specify extensions for email applications, such as whether they contain text in other languages, such as French that have accents, or Chinese that have a different alphabet, or whether they contain audio and video files, or whether they contain executable code inside the emails or something like that. So this would specify what types of files we are considering. So just look at your homework and does anyone want to tell me if it's possible that one browser starts a one helper application, but the other browser starts a different helper application?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So it's possible. And why is that?
They're different browsers. One's made by Microsoft, the other one's open source.
Okay. So they're different browsers. So what is different about them?
The one's made by
They would
Microsoft.
launch a different program, completely different program.
One's made by Microsoft, and then another one's open source.
It's the way the framework is set up.
So what is made by Microsoft, which means it's configured by Microsoft, which applications it should open was specified by Microsoft. So they might have different configuration tables inside the browser, which will tell them which helper application to open.
there might be certain couple applications that only work for Internet Explorer or only work for Firefox.
Okay, great. So he was saying that earlier that the one browser is made by Microsoft, and the Firefox is open source. So the Firefox might be running, for example, on an Apple computer. For example, if these are two different computers, they might have different software on them altogether. Like the Apple computer, Macintosh might not have a Microsoft Word on it at all. So it might end up launching a different application to open a Word document than with the Microsoft product. Because think about it, this is a totally separate process that runs separately from the browser, because the exercise is asking for a helper application and not a plugin. Another thing is that, so it might be running on a different machine with software, with different software installed on it altogether. And the other thing is that if it's Microsoft, then Microsoft, the way it works, the Windows, it associates applications with the file extensions. So, for example, Word would be opened by doc file would be opened by Microsoft Word, or JPEG would be opened by some photo viewing application, and they would associate file extensions with the application, which might be different than what the MIME type specified. So Microsoft takes this as more important than the MIME type. That's why Internet Explorer might end up opening something different than the Firefox. And thank you. And the other exercise had to do with streaming audio and video, which we had a presentation about it last time. It was exercise 41 from chapter 7. It says, the exercise is asking, does voice over IP, does it have the same problems as streaming audio? What was it asking?
With firewalls.
Could you look at the textbook first?
Yeah, with firewalls.
With firewalls.
Yeah.
So this voice over IP have the same problems with firewalls as streaming audio. Now we remember that when we talked about TCP, the Transmission Control Protocol, we said that to establish the connection, we are using something called a port, and the port is like a small gate or a gateway through which we can access a particular machine. And so each machine has many ports that are available for connections to be established to that machine. The firewalls close most of those ports. Why do you think the firewalls will close ports? And we need the ports to establish connections from one computer to another, TCP connections.
To protect the computer from attacks.
Okay, so if they are parts that are not used, we want to close them because these are open gates to hackers and viruses and other unwanted things that can connect to our machine. But at the same time, we need applications to work in order to establish connections such as voice over IP or Internet Explorer or any other applications that need to use the network that need a connection. So has it happened to you before that you would install some application and it says the firewall is blocking this application? Do you want to allow this application to work with the firewall?
Yes.
Yes. So if you say no, then this application will be, the ports that it needs will be closed. And so unfortunately, firewalls cause problems in applications that we do want and need to work, such as voice over IP. So what do you think? Does streaming audio, voice over IP have problems with firewalls? If somebody's trying to call via voice over IP, can anyone tell me what they wrote about this exercise? Just look at your homework you turned in earlier today. Yes?
So if the person being called is on a regular, like it said something about the person being called being on a phone, and then the caller was behind a firewall, it wouldn't have a problem because it's just calling a telephone, so that's not going to have any issue with the UDP packets. But if your firewall had a problem with outgoing UDP packets, then it wouldn't work. And then also if the caller or the person being called is behind a firewall that blocked those UDP packets, then it wouldn't work also because there would be no connection.
Okay, right. So what he's saying is if the person who is receiving the call is the regular phone line, because we can use voice over IP to call regular telephones. So if the person that gets the phone call isn't a regular phone, or the calling person does not have a firewall that is stopping voice over IP, then it will be fine. However, if there is a firewall which is not allowing UDP packets, then the voice over IP will not